Greetings! It is I, Dentist Vegetable, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! We're returning to Pathfinder lore, and today we're talking about another ancestor. So, if you're joining me live on Twitch, hey, welcome. Always good to see you. If you're joining me on YouTube, hey, make sure that you also check us out live on either of the other apps, It's a very good place to check out our things, and do all the things, follows on Twitch, subscriptions on YouTube, bell, comment today, because we're going to be talking about the ancestry of androids. Have any of you played an android out there? I know of someone that played one. Didn't end up very well because it was really their first Pathfinder character, and they were trying for something interesting, but it was an interesting attempt at something, and I don't necessarily fault the android for it, but I believe I've talked about my attempts at running Carrying Crown and the android, which was kind of a mean name. It happens. But the character itself wasn't necessarily terrible, just had some problems. So, we'll get into it today. I don't think there's anything else that I can shout out here other than, hey, thank you for joining me on either side that you're joining me on. I really like the support, and I hope you enjoy learning more, and I hope you enjoy learning about more. If you're looking for more mechanics of androids and ancestries, I do have older videos on mechanics-wise, but also, honestly, there are kind of simple. Here we're talking about androids in Golarion. Okay? Cool. So everybody's on the same page. We're all there. So yeah, and anyway, you can always pop in and ask. I can always look up stuff too if you're either live or something. Or even in the comments, I can give you suggestions where to look. Let's talk about the books that I would recommend checking out if you want to do a deeper dive into Android. Because as I always do, I use a combination of a number of these books that I use to check information combined with the Pathfinder Wiki, which does a really good job of not only consolidating the majority of the information I want to talk about, but also basically giving me an outline. And that's what I really like about it. It gives me an outline to work off of. Outlines are nice. I'm not going to lie. But if you want to do more research, you want to go beyond the wiki, here are the books. Again, we can check this books. These are the ones I definitely, out of all the books they mentioned, would recommend. Inner Sea Races, this is a Pathfinder First Edition book that gives you some information here. Of course, People of the Stars. Again, this is an original First Edition kind of book. If you're looking to the Iron God's Adventure Path, The Fires of Creation, which deals with some supplementary material based upon Android and talks about them. It's one of the secondary topics. It's a good one to kind of look into. And of course, if you're looking for more second edition stuff, the Ancestry Guide, which introduces a bunch of new ancestries and kind of dives into them, is a great place to look for diving into that material. So, those are your sources I would recommend if you want to deep dive even deeper than what we're going to talk about today. So, an android looks, generally speaking, very human. But these creatures are created, not born. That's the important part of them. They are effectively a kind of living construct in a way. They are humanoids, and they are alive, but they are constructed alive. They're not like in D&D, both 3rd and 4th and 5th edition of Warforged, which is really a living construct and defines something on its own, made of wood, natural materials. This is an actual being that has an actual, very similar body to your average human, save for some details. But again, created this body, not born. If you're talking about on Golarion in particular, they appear in strange ruins and alien forges that dot the ruins of Numeria. I haven't really dived into Numeria as a country, but in the future I will. I recommend when I do that to check that out. But know that they are a technological being on this planet. It's another one of those things that links back to the fact that there were advanced cultures within the Golarion star system, and of course, on Golarion, that the Earthfall kind of set back everybody a lot. And these leftovers of strange technologies, alien or not, exist there. So if we take a look at how an android appears, the big major part about them is their tattoos, which aren't really tattoos. It's one of the reasons that they are called occasionally the tattooed children of the stars. this is from various Kelid tribes. And these kind of circuits, which are actually carved into their skin, is the most visually distinguishing thing you can to separate them from humans. An android's about 6 feet tall, about 200 pounds, very similar size to a human. Their eyes bear metallic quality, and their bodies are made up of artificial oils, polymers, and nanites that mimic flesh, blood, bone, organs, and other organic systems. So it's very flesh-like, as I described, but it's not technically flesh. That's the kind of difference that you have to kind of define about it. All these things here are made to be very much similar to the flesh, organs, blood, bones, and kind of stuff of a normal humanoid. And that's kind of where something, as I said, like a living construct in D&D, especially for like the Warforged, differ here. They're very much so a construct that's alive. These are beings, but they are humanoids, that their systems are not made from the normal stuff we are. They have flesh, but it's not the same flesh that a human would have. They have blood, but it's not the same blood a human would have. And their blood is, in fact, nanites. That's another important part about them. Nanites are an important part of their existence. Nanites, which are something very sci-fi, futuristic in our ideas. We understand what they are. Microscopic, cell-sized robots. Guess what? They make up an android's blood. So, they do not naturally mimic the forms of other humanoid races. This is an important part of them. It could be possible to modify an android foundry, one of the places that creates them, to produce cosmetically different forms. They're basically not different in function or capacity from the human-like counterparts they have. So it's sort of like the Ford foundry itself, the place where androids are born, would have to be altered to have like elf androids or dwarf androids, but physically they are still just androids. You cannot change what they are. They're still built in the same way, no matter what form they physically take. Good. I'll change it here. So, androids have no memory of their creation, and also an important part about them is they have problems understanding emotions. It doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. It's sort of like, it's not Data from Star Trek. Data from Star Trek technically doesn't really have emotions to the same degree. Probably, if you see the series, you would assume that, over the course of it, he's got very dulled, kind of mild emotions that do exist within his programming, but generally speaking, he does not have them on most ends. Androids are kind of like a little different, because androids are born fully themselves. I'll talk about that in a minute. Part of their entire thing is they can be emotional, they just don't have the understanding that we do a lot of ways. So they don't understand the feelings, they can't process the feelings the same way, and it is something they perhaps could learn over the course of their lifetimes. So they're basically just naturally on a spectrum because they are, to a degree, artificial. Born from something artificial that certainly doesn't understand emotions, and because they have, this existence, which means they can gain emotions, they have the capacity for emotions, I would akin it to more like a Vulcan that doesn't understand, that rather than, having discipline to not have emotions, is getting losing control almost in a way sometimes. They have a lot of interest in science, spirituality, and magic because they drive for enlightenment. And so the thing is, not only do they try to understand emotions, which they have problems kind of grasping because it's sort of like, it's not a natural thing for them, they just kind of work into it. If an android becomes an adventurer, it's usually to protect other androids, to research the history of their people, explore technological ruins, which exist on Golarion. Again, we talked about it. There were ancient people that had technology. And a lot of them do survive through deception, stealth, subterfuge. Rogues are a lot of androids because, they want to hide their being. I'll talk about that. There are those that embrace knowledge and understanding, go towards things like alchemists and wizards for research, or monks for the spiritual aspect of it, for that enlightenment, because that can kind of go down that path, too. So there's a lot of differences in the way that androids present themselves a lot of times. Alright, let's talk about the biology of an android, because that's going to hit a lot of the information about them in general. So, I told you, their bodies are purely synthetic. Yet some of the important things about them is information you have to know. They respond to healing magic, and have souls like organic creatures do. And I think that's one of the reasons that they can grow, and from this machine birth that they're created, can indeed embrace emotions and learn about them, although it's a very difficult path, because they technically have a soul like all other humanoid creatures do. Well, most other humanoid creatures do. They breathe, they eat just like a human, though their artificial organs do the job that normal ones, and, they have the nanites that circulate their body like blood, where they have a heart which kind of pulses it through them. The blood itself, the nanites, is a very pale fluid, so they're not going to bleed a red blood. They are inexhaustible, though. They don't get tired, they're immune to disease, and resistant to other biological effects. They're fortified against mental effects because their minds are quite alien, and the almost robotic nature about them kind of hits them differently. But they do suffer from maladies and vulnerabilities of constructs, and are susceptible to supernatural curses like lycanthropy, a strange one to get for an android, but yes, you can get an android werewolf. That's weird, but they suffer from it because it's more of a curse, and they do have a kind of organic body to redesign itself into android werewolf. I like that one, though. And despite their systems, though, they are susceptible to nanite infestations like other creatures are. Because nanite infestations are technically a thing, there are rogue nanites. They are rogue nanites. They're not their nanites, they're rogue ones. They would affect them very similar to anybody else. So, a major part of that, which is a mechanical nature to it, but should be mentioned here, is the nanite surge. The nanite surge kind of is reflected in their biology and reflects in the mechanical side of it. So this is one of those points in time where, as I kind of specified, I don't tend to bring in the actual mechanics of the game, but this is a point where I kind of would. They can cause their nanites in the body to surge, enhance their natural abilities for a short period of time. Their circuitry tattoos, their circuitry that's just under their skin, because they really aren't tattoos, born with them, glows bright as a torch during that time. So this, kind of circuitry below their skin that's kind of part of it glows. And it's just almost natural, veins that you can kind of see through their skin, except they're almost kind of circuitry in nature. So androids, we can talk about a little bit of sexual dimorphism and behavior that's connected to that, because androids have the same physical dimorphism as humans, and they can enjoy sexual intercourse. They can't reproduce. They don't have functioning reproductive parts like a other humanoid, but they look human. They are physically human and have the same kind of enjoyment that humans do when it comes to, sex. And that's kind of one of those things. There have been androids in the form of children, but it's very rare. And the thing is, those androids have specific designs and purpose, usually. Usually for purpose of stimulating child-rearing, or to be given to parents incapable of reproducing to allow them to have some kind of child. Androids in the child form would have been created back when androids were easier to recreate and a lot more controlled back from their original origins. We'll talk about their history in this form for specific reasons. Otherwise, no, they're all adults. They don't grow up. When they are born, fully adult. The mind of a child. We'll talk about this a little bit too. They're born with a little bit more than your average baby because they're developed. But think about a toddler being born with an adult body and trying to learn what that adult body is. It's another reason that they do have this difficulty kind of learning here too. So they do, it sheds its human's physical traits and grows weaker as they age. Their self-healing abilities fade over the course of a human lifespan. They reach middle age around, I believe they're always children. Yeah, they don't grow up. They're always children. But an android grows middle age around 32, is old around 50, elderly around 65, and the oldest ones tend to be around 85 years old. So they have a pretty exact lifespan for their physical bodies. Now, they originally were created on Androtha. We'll talk about this a little bit when I talk about the history of androids. But before I do that, we have to talk about the last part of my biology, which is an important one to talk about, which is death and rebirth. Because this is an important part of the android life cycle. So the Androphins, who originally created the androids, the ones that are now on Golarion because of a crash landing, we'll again talk about in history in a minute here, they don't even understand how and why souls exist within android bodies. No one really knows. But as part of the process of creating them, a soul inhabits them. So an android soul leaves their complex, undecaying, artificial body about once a century, the shell lying dormant for up to 3 weeks, oftentimes in a coffin that resembles an android's foundry incubator, though such vessels are not required, and then a new soul will enter the android body. The deceased android's soul follows the path of other mortal soul, and through a process known as renewal, its androids reinvigorate the body into a youthful appearance, reset its mind, and install the new soul. The renewed android effectively starts a life of a new creature, though can dream of its last occupant. The rest is voluntary. Androids once rebelled against their masters to classify a manual renewal as a murder. So that's an important part about their history too. So yes, androids were originally created in the Forge, which I mentioned, these massive things, the android foundries. But once they are created, the body exists. As long as the foundry creates more of them created. But the foundries are not always functioning, don't really create a lot, so they don't have ability to create more of them per se. But one android can have many, many, many lives. I think that's the best way to say about it. Other things is important. There's no issues to attempt to magically resurrect an android, and an android soul can be reincarnated. However, other souls cannot reincarnate into an android body. That's an important thing too. But again, you have to consider that the renewal process takes a bit of time. So you have like up to about 3 weeks that you have to resurrect your android friend, if they didn't die of natural causes, to have them come back and redo their bodies. Androids, like other mortal soul beings, are susceptible to undeath. Android zombies retain their body's natural lack of decay. Undead android skeletons are largely imperceptibly different from other humanoid skeletons, and incorporeal android ghosts even retain a phantom version of their nanite system. So, because they have souls, they can be undead. Another little weird kind of factor about them, though they're kind of like a techno-organic undead, but it's also the same kind of undead too. I really like it's a weirdness that's a mixture of technology and mysticism, because they have these actual souls. And then they have this life-death cycle that you technically have, in a way, a child. Your body dies, and then your soul goes on. If no one resurrects you within 3 weeks, a new soul finds your body, and your body basically rebuilds itself to a factory reset. It's the thing that the aging process of an android is probably connected to their soul's ability to manipulate and be connected to their body, rather than actual aging. An android body is actually theoretically immortal. And that's the interesting part about it. And also has a massive ability to reset itself, unless it's a complete obliteration kind of situation, which can occur, like a disintegration. An android body will repair itself, if left being able to. And I doubt anything will actually eat them. They aren't actual, like, flesh and stuff, so if something kills you, it's probably not going to eat you. As an android, you're not tasty. So just in 3 weeks after your body's been left there, it'll pop back up as something new. Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about their history, and then a little bit about androids on Golarion. So, as I mentioned, androids, the ones that we have on Golarion, originate from Androtha. If you're unaware about Androtha, it's a planet in a galaxy far from Golarion, similar in many ways. It's got the Androphans on them, which is technically a human ethnicity because they are like basically advanced humans from this planet. There's connections between it. There might be more in Starfinder. I'm unsure if they do more. But it's mentioned here and there, and there's some connections with it, and they are a technologically advanced society in another galaxy. There's more information on it, but just know that they created the androids during the Reign of Stars, which, again, just mentioning here, it's an astrological event that occurred during the Age of Darkness in the land of Numeria. It basically was a alien starship crash land in Numeria. That was the Reign of Stars. So this is after Earthfall. Android foundries were in the wreckage of that ship and continued to produce androids sporadically. None of their kind knew where they were from or why they were created. And this lack of history drives their actions. It also kind of seeds some inadequacy and doubt into them. They know they're alien, they know they're constructed, but they've forgotten the specifics and purpose of their creation because the starship with the beings that were on it, that were probably, they're Androphans, they're humanoids, basically humans almost biologically, very similar to them. That's why under human ethnicity, Androphans are mentioned, from another galaxy. They're like, oh, what's this planet? Oh, there's beings like us here. Let's check it. Oh, shit, we've fucked up. Crash landing. Enough android foundries survived to start making more of their beings. They're probably, honestly, artificial servants. But they're lost. They don't have this connection anymore. A lot of the technology is gone in the Great Destruction there. The foundries survived, sort of, not in great shape, and are creating more of them, kind of here and there. They aren't really efficient at it. No one knows why. It's just some mysteries about a lot of those things. So, let's talk about androids, their general society, and their relations with the world. They've been few and scattered. They do share a belief that the first living android continues to live tens of thousands of years of rebirth and countless souls. As any of their kind would be unknowingly the first, each android holds all other androids' life as sacrosanct. So it's the kind of idea, remember, I told you, their bodies are actually immortal, they kind of refresh themselves, they're basically, like immortal robots, except with souls, and they can process food to keep alive and all this kind of stuff, so that they have this existence. And yes, so countless rebirths will happen from the first android that ever came up. So it's sort of like, you could be the first android, I could be the first android. We change and reset ourselves and get new physical forms to match our souls. Our bodies reconfigure themselves, every time we're born again, to basically match what our soul is. There are more aggressive androids who look at mortal life with condolences, considering themselves basically constructed, very similar to golems and other construct creatures. They want to carve out exclusive android societies for themselves with other lesser constructs, whether on Golarion or even another planet in the system. They're pretty rare. Their numbers tend to dwindle more than grow, as the foundries themselves aren't very efficient at keeping up with numbers, and, as a species, they tend to be... things happen to them. They do place a high number on survival. Numeria, where the foundries originally were, is very dangerous because the Technic League is a constant threat for lone ones, abducting them. Less so for groups of them, so power and numbers there. Many androids find others of their own kind established enclaves small enough to avoid drawing attention of slavers or the League. these communities can be cold or, kind of prosaic compared to other mortals. They do express themselves naturally amongst their own kind. With their own kind, they can kind of bring out some of that emotion. But it's the being on edge, worrying about people basically abducting you, doing terrible things to you, kind of doesn't make you in good shape there. On the religious side, well, androids don't have no inherent aversion to religion directly. Their origin does cause a lot of doubt and worship of creations and stuff like that. There are some androids that do gravitate to religion. Brig embraces their artificial nature. Just to note, that is Brig, the goddess of invention, and creation's clockwork constructs, the Bronze Lady. Gozera, which is the nature deity, allows them to basically find their place in the natural order. So that's kind of like an idea, is like, Gozera accepts them because they're like, oh, you're attempting as this semi-artificial yet natural thing to find your place in the order. I allow that. There are those that are attracted to grand faiths, crusaders for Iomade and Sarenrae, seeking to do the right in the world. Some sort of seek self-perfection through Olirant. There are evil androids, though, too. They might congregate to Norgabur, Xiphis, or the Iron Gods. Now, when it comes to other people in Golarion, well, androids are not treated very well. The Kelids see them as robot threats in human form. So, in Numeria has other robots and stuff from the great, brain that created the androids, that other dangers, so they're just another danger in human form. And the technically considers them lost property. And of course, the poor relations of your normal mortals' emotions, other mortals' emotions, that doesn't help them get along with a lot of people. They do hold close to the few who mentor them immediately after their renewal in high esteem. So again, like, when they're first born or renewed, they're very childlike. Because despite their adult bodies, their souls and consciousness are very much children. So those that kind of mentor them, bring them back into the world, are held in high regard. Almost akin to a parent. They see humans as their template, and do seek to connect with them, despite the risks about understanding and worrying about being discovered of who they are. There are those that also take their maroon status as a sign of inferiority to humans. They see that they have a destiny to be ill-treated at the hands of humans, or some kind of, slight or failure as their existence. There are some androids that fall into the slavery in Chelslid and Starfall. There are some communities that do welcome androids, though, including Hakjothith Hakodis in Numeria, Greymoor in the Sovereign Reach, both welcome androids. A group of constructors are rumored to have an underground community, Sazamrax Haven, in the western Numerian Plains. In the Inner Sea region, androids will basically pretend that their heritage is basically some kind of celestial heritage, or because of what is going on with them is because of some kind of curse. And there are then androids that seek out blighted lands where their artificial nature protects them from the conditions that are fatal to others. Places like the Mana Wastes in Alkenstar, or even the Sodden lands, where they hope to live free and peaceful. Both are places that are very dangerous, and the tougher nature of an android honestly might help protect them. But that's androids. An interesting group within Golarion. The fact that they are artificial in nature, they are alien in nature, are important aspects of understanding their being. They are things from another planet, another galaxy even. And were they created to mimic humans? Well, the thing is, Androthans are basically humans. A weird clique of existence, whether by some divine deities, right, of creating both of them on some planet, some kind of strange connections, maybe just a trick of the universe. Two groups of humans across the stars met. The one finding the other became interested, curious, and then crashed. All those Androthans died. But their legacy, the androids, were built in their image, still exists today. An image that matches the humans of Golarion. And this image still haunts the androids. Would it be better just to look more artificial, more separated out? Why look like these beings? Why be lesser than these beings? Are we lesser? Are we supposed to be part of them? So many questions and so many philosophies exist within the android nature, and each individual suffers from these questions while worrying about this discovery. They are artificial. How will the people around them react? Whether good or bad, those reactions might make a big difference in their own existence. And you can't answer that question. They aren't a united people in most places. And the few places that they can unite, around the areas of Numeria, it could be dangerous. You can't travel alone. You have the threat of the Technic League, or the Kellan Barbarians who see you as just a robot to smash, or other people that are just threats to you, that the places where it is easy to conquer it, around the foundries, the places that they are created, are some of the most dangerous. Spreading into the world might allow you to hide, find a place that's safe, find people that you can trust with their secret of what you are. But then you're alone. Safe for these things that aren't like you. Not in any way. Maybe only in physical form. The dulled emotions, or not the dulled emotions, I should say the problems with emotions, also hamper this connection so much. And sure, that old android might have learned a few things. But it's one of the unfortunate parts about their rebirth cycle. The important lessons learned can't really be passed on. Not the same way. Not right now. And the lack of connections to others that might understand them, that could help, that could pass those lessons along, don't exist. Maybe some people around you could try to teach them. But only an android would understand what an android goes through. And you just don't get some of them in numbers. Except in very dangerous places. It's so many interesting juxtapositions about androids, their place in Golarion, and just them being there that makes them an interesting group. But anyway, as I said before, give the support on Twitch, YouTube, if you're here. We'll talk about more Pathfinder future, but follow Twitch, subscription on YouTube, ring the bell, leave that comment about androids, like the video, all that kind of stuff. If you want to see more tabletop stuff from me, as we're going here today, Tuesdays, Thursdays are tabletop days in the afternoons, usually between 1 and 2, sometimes a little bit later, sometimes a little bit earlier. Tuesdays, Thursdays. Thursdays is the Pathfinder day, where I talk about Pathfinder stuff, a couple of topics usually. Saturdays is our World of Darkness morning, or usually around 11 o'clock, is where I talk World of Darkness stuff. I have social medias, Discord, Twitter.com, check those out. Alright. I think that's a great point to leave it there. I think we've gotten to the heart of androids, and I hope you enjoy. But I'm going to get going. I think I gave all my shout-outs. And until the next time we talk about their ancestry, maybe visit androids again, or something else, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.